This podcast is part of the SJ Network. Go to s-j-network.com for more great podcasts and for contact information on publicist Steve Joyner.
You are listening to In a City Like Yours, a semi-monthly podcast featuring interesting people with interesting life stories. This podcast may contain language and/or subject matter not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm your host, Michael G. Moore. Please visit our website at inacitylikeyours.com. That's INACITYLIKEYOURS.com for links to our social media, all popular podcast platforms, and links of interest pertaining to all episodes. On this episode, Colin tells the story of when in 2001 he journeyed to India at the age of 24 to help film a documentary on an important Hindu bathing ritual which was to take place along the Ganges River. During his visit, he soaked in the culture and even met the Dali Lama. This trip would last for 30 days and would change his life. Here is Colin's story.
My name is Colin Bressler. I live in San Antonio, Texas. By way, I'm from New York City and Florida. So the year was 2001. It was January. I happened to be, the backdrop of it is, I would happen to be in India. I arrived in India, I remember it vividly, January 3rd, 2001. I had rarely at this time in my life been outside of the country. So I had, about a year previous, I had been to Spain for about a 10-day project I was working on with a friend. And that was the actual first time I had left the country to fly over the ocean, so to speak. So I had gotten involved in a project to fly over to India. And it was a sort of a humanitarian sort of documentary experience that I was involved in. And we flew into India, and the flight had been expanded to being even longer. I believe at the time it was about a 15-hour flight. But when the flight we took, there was issues with the New Delhi airport's power. So because the power was out, we were stranded in Zurich, Switzerland for about a day. It was actually about 14 hours or so. So we got to experience Zurich, Switzerland for a little bit, and then finally got on the plane. So as you can imagine at this point, me and the 20 other Americans I was flying with got to India, and we were pretty jet lagged. And I remember the feeling of almost hallucinatory experience of, I struggled to sleep on planes at the time, so I barely had slept. It probably had been over a day at this point. And so we land in India, and I'd never been, like I said, to a place quite like this. And you come out, and the airport's filled with people, looking at you, because we obviously looked a little different. We're clearly from the West, most likely America, from their perspective. And so we arrive, we get out, we jump into a little bus, sort of van/bus vehicle. And the man who hired me, or brought me out there with him, who was sort of overseeing this whole art installation, documentary, anthropological study thing, was this charismatic guy. And he brought us all out there, and he had been to India multiple times, and he told me, he said, "Hey, just so you know, this ride's going to be about 18 hours. I said, 18 hours? We're just, okay. And he said, it's actually not, the distance isn't very far. It's just that the drive itself with the roads, and it's just a very different place here, And I remember early on in that drive, probably within the first few hours, everybody had gotten their energy back. We were all really excited, looking out the window at this incredible countryside. And I remember one of the local Indian fixers who was there to there were two of them, and one of them who was there to they were there to help us get around, translate language issues, whatever, right? Whatever we needed, they were fixers. And so he told me, I had struck up a conversation with him and we were talking, his English was quite good. And he told me, he said, Colin, the one thing I'll tell you is about India for a Westerner is don't overthink India. Just let it wash over you. And I remember to this day, I still think about that when he told me that. And so, like I said, I wouldn't say I was someone who was sheltered, but, I hadn't had that many experiences outside of the comfortability of my American life, so to speak. And so we're driving on a bus. And one of the things I remember on that ride, like I said, it was about 18 hours, and when we had arrived in India, it was already late afternoon. And it was January. So the sun set, probably a few hours after the ride had started. So a lot of the ride was at night. And I remember watching, I sat near the back and you could see through the aisle of the middle of the bus vehicle. You could see out the front window. And I remember being like, a lot of people had fallen asleep at this point, but I just was jet lagged. I couldn't sleep. And I remember looking through the front window and seeing this insane, amazing, scary, frightening game of chicken happening between the van or bus, whatever you want to call it. Let's just call it a van from here on out. The van that was, it seemed like we must have been on a road that was about 1 lane or 1.5 lanes, and the trucks and cars were coming right at us. And at the last minute, each of us decided to go one way or another, and you had to sort of pick a side. And I remember being at first horrified and frightened by this, but then as time went on, I sort of almost just let it be what it was, and it became kind of almost like a game, and it was kind of fun, actually, kind of crazy. So after, like I said, after about 18 hours, we finally arrive in the city, and we were, like I said, we were sort of, the whole point was to have us sort of embedded in this culture and embedded in this experience. And the experience we were there to document was a bathing ritual called the Mahakumbh Mela, which is a Hindu bathing ceremony about nirvana, or and I'm probably butchering this, but it's about, like, you bathe in this river. It's in a Western sense, it's the stairway to heaven, and it cleanses you of your sins, and it sort of cleanses you of any misdeeds or bad feelings or whatever, right? So it's this important Hindu spiritual festival. And again, before I had come, I had very limited knowledge of India. I had dated an Indian woman in high school. I learned a little bit through her, but very little. And at this time, I was about 24 years old. I remember going to Barnes & Noble and 14th Street in New York City to prepare and reading all those little handbooks they have for travel. That's literally the research I had done on this. And then, shamefully, admittedly. And so, once we arrived, we packed we got all our stuff settled and everything. And the key I want to explain, in the backdrop of everything, the main portion of my story, is that, we didn't really have a home. It wasn't like there was Airbnbs or things like that. We didn't have, the guy that brought us out there didn't have resources to put us up in a hotel. So we slept in this abandoned skeleton of a building. When I say skeleton, I mean, it had no windows, no doors. It was just this concrete structure. And before going, I had bought a very inexpensive 2-man tent from Kmart at the time. And I brought that with me for this exact reason, because I didn't know. We weren't really given a lot of information about what was going to happen. So when we got there, I didn't, I just wanted to be prepared for everything. And I'm kind of like a little bit crazy with this kind of stuff. So I was like, I need to know where I'm sleeping. I need to know all this stuff. So everybody's looking around, and they had built these sort of wooden cot things, and they had stacked them. So there was like these sort of bunk bed areas and all this kind of stuff. But all of it, keep in mind, was exposed to the elements, meaning there was like a cloth overhang that sort of blocked you, I guess, from the rain maybe. But short of that, mosquitoes, bugs, the heat, all that stuff, the cold, because at night it got kind of cold. There was a desert sort of climate where we were. So you were exposed to this 24/7 when they were. So I was so happy. I was the only person with a tent. So I actually put my tent on the roof, which was also just exposed, clean roof. I put my tent, I remember I put it kind of close to the edge, and I always kind of had this moment of thinking, like, what if I roll over in my sleep and take the whole tent off the side of the building, which at this point I was about 3 stories above the ground, to my demise. And so that's where we were sleeping. And the home, like I said, it didn't have amenities. We had to go to the restroom into a hole in the ground that was downstairs off to the house. That was the bathroom. It wasn't a toilet. It was very, very rustic and I don't know the words, but it was very sparse conditions. But the truth is that we were there for around 30 something days, and I actually really got very used to it, and it wasn't much of a problem for me, which I was very proud of myself, and also shocked that I had made the adjustment that simply. But I remember the first day, and so like I said, this was a Hindu bathing ceremony. It was also January 24th, which was in the future at this point, 20 something days into the future. There was going to be the culmination of the event, where about roughly 35 million people were going to be coming to the waters to bathe. They said it was at the time going to be the largest gathering of human beings in the history of the world. I don't know if that's true. I can't fact check that. Feel free to, the 2001 Maha Kumbh Mela. So this was sort of hanging over a backdrop of a lot of stuff, because I remember on the plane even talking about it, and people telling me, the anthropologist telling me that there's been a lot of death at these events because there's stampeding and all these kind of things. And so I always had that in the back of my mind. But the other thing is, across the river from our skeleton building house, there was the event. We were literally across the river Ganges or Ganga River in India. And across that river was where the bathing ritual ceremonies all took place. And they had built all these incredible, elaborate I would even call them almost like tent palaces or tent temples. They were incredible things to see. And so we, the first day we got in there, we settled in briefly, and then Casey, the guy who brought us out there, said, "Hey, let's go over there. Let's go peruse." And it was already open, and there was stuff. There were people selling things, and there was food and things like that. It was kind of akin to an event that we would have here, like a, rock festival or a musical festival in a way, just smaller. It's bigger than those festivals. And so we cross over on this rickety little boat that these men were just literally bringing people to and from each coastline or whatever, each river bank, and they'd bring you across, pay them a little bit of money, get out. And so I start walking around. I had never, as I said, this is the first real true experience of India. I'm I'm so tired. It's now probably 7, 8, 9 in the morning. Haven't really slept much at all. I'm delirious. And we walk around. I remember vividly seeing the colors were amazing. There were people everywhere, animals roaming free everywhere, dogs, cows, pigs, you name it, just running free. And I just remember being kind of blown away by it. And so as it had gone on, we all sort of ended up splitting up to 20 some odd Americans. And I ended up with a group of about 4 people who like I said, I had just pretty much met that day, the last 24 hours or so. And so they start taking me around, and we go into a few of these guru tents, and they're tents with men in there, and they're religious leaders called gurus, and sadhus also is another name. And you go in there and they bless you and they talk to you, and most of these men did not speak English. And I just sat there and I listened to a man talk. I didn't know what he was saying. But I was still enamored and blown away by the situation. And I remember that they had given us this little itty bitty balls of like black balls. They were like chewy. And I was told you had to, when in Rome, so to speak. So I took it and started chewing on it, and I ate it. Little did I know they were some form of drug, to sort of hallucinogenic type material. So I get out of we finished up with that. I come out of the tent, and I start to sort of wander off because I'm my brain is starting to just go crazy and out there, and I'm just smiling and laughing for no reason and such. And so now I'm in this foreign country I've never been in. I'm under the influence. I'm, looking at the sights and looking at this experience and just absolutely in over my head is really how I would say it. And lo and behold, I turn around and there's an international TV news crew. I'd be lying if I said I remember where they were from, but they did speak English. They looked Western, maybe European or something. And they come up to me and they go, "Oh, where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, New York." And they go, "Well, what do you think of the Coom?" Which is like the short vernacular for the event. And I said, "Oh, and I'm not kidding you. I go on a rant for, I don't know. Like I said, I was under the influence. It could have been 30 seconds. It felt like an hour. And I just went off and on about colors and lights and the beauty of the world and all this kind of stuff. I was rescued by one of the anthropologists that found me and probably saw me just spewing whatever it was coming out of my mouth. She grabs me, says, "All right, he's good." And they were like, "Okay, thanks." And they weren't upset that I left, but they were probably happy that I finally had finished. But I left them and then spent the rest of the day with her, and she was just so brilliant. She was an anthropologist, had been to India multiple times, knew everything, and was telling me. And it was kind of important because even though I still was under the influence, I was kind of had brought, I slowly came back to my functions, and she taught me about the customs, and she would show me things. "Oh, this is their men hold hands here." "Oh, okay." And it's not a thing, and they're friends or whatever. Or you do this or you do that. And I got this incredible lesson. So as the time passed in this event, every day we'd, sleep, get up early because you're in a tent. So everybody's waking up at crack of dawn because of the light of the sun. We'd get up, go across, find food. Now, food was also sparse as well because it was mostly vending, or you could eat in the guru's tents where they would have these elaborate, incredible meals laid out for you. And it was some of the most incredible food. You'd sit on a mat and you'd eat off a giant banana leaf or some giant leaf. And there'd be these just rice and different kind of things. And sometimes you just buy samosas from a vendor for like no money at all. The backstory to that is I had about $80 American dollars with me, and the $80 ended up lasting me almost the entire trip. It wasn't until the last few days that I actually had to dip into a credit card. But so each day we kept going back and forth, and each day was about meeting these different gurus, and we would film them and interview them and talk to them and just taking in this entire event. And like I said, I was always at a default of one, I didn't know the language. I brought a little guidebook that had a lot of translations, and I tried and I learned some words, and I even tried to have conversations with it that were these ridiculous conversations, but I was just broken Hindi, me ranting or whatever. And so as time went on, we went back and forth, and after a while, I just, it was almost too much, and I started to just kind of lose myself a little bit, I guess, in the whole thing and the whole experience. And that, a lot of it, like I said, was a spiritual and religious experience, and I didn't really grow up in a way that I was ultra brought up in a certain church or a certain theology. And so this is all absolutely new to me. I knew nothing about Hinduism or anything. And so, but it was also all encompassing, every day was about this, and we would meet different gurus, and some of the gurus we met were massive celebrities in India. And I mean celebrities, were incredibly famous and well received, and were chauffeured around and had bodyguards and stuff like that. And I remember trying so desperately to sort of grab hold of something and needing that and not understanding why I needed that so much. I was so confused by this urge inside of me to have things make sense for me and my culture and my customs. And it was sort of and I remember a couple of the Americans that were a little fresher, like me and not the ones like the anthropologists I had previously talked about, I remember them actually saying similar things, that there was sort of this feeling of like a constant pressure and pushing against, you know, sort of your instincts and wanting things to sort of unfold the way you needed them to, the way you felt they should. And so eventually, you know, over probably 15 days in, we get word that the Dali Lama of the Buddhist faith, the famous Dali Lama, was actually here at the event. It was early in the morning, and this brought shockwaves through us, because obviously him being an internationally famous person and a big deal, we all wanted to meet him and film him and talk to him. And so the people that sort of put the event together, our event, I mean our group, said, you know, look, we're gonna spend part of the day, we're gonna go find out who his people are, how we get in touch with them, and we need to meet him. We get it. So you guys do your thing. So we said, yeah, no, please, that'd be amazing. We'll all meet back, you know, X amount of time. So we went off and did our thing and did some cool stuff. And then later, Ken, the guy that I was working with, Kenneth Ang, comes, you know, we reorganize and says, look, we're all, in about an hour, we're all going to head over and we're going to meet the Dalai Lama and interview him and talk to him. So we all head over to the Dalai Lama. He was actually like a sort of a guest of one of the bigger tents, the bigger groupings. And the guru that he was there with was a massively important religious leader in India. And so we all go over there, and I remember distinctly noticing how different this man's environment was than the other places I'd been on the place. And we had walked past it a few times, and it had these giant entranceway, orange entranceway made of cloth but spun around metal. So they were like, they looked like two towers, almost like a castle made of cloth. And you go through there, and then there's this giant open area where they have like a concert area stage where musicians would play or there would be speeches made. And I just remember it being, I think, probably one of the most, if not the most impressive structures and places. So we get there and we're ushered in, and there's these kind of bodyguard type guys. And the Dalai Lama actually had these men, a couple of men around him that had sort of what looked like Kalashnikov AK-47s. I remember this being important because it was like the first time I had seen sort of guns, you know, in a long time. And I remember being a little intimidated by it because it just, you know, we hadn't seen it, and the police even didn't really have guns there. They had like nightsticks. So it was just a little jarring. I was like, oh wow, the Dalai Lama has bodyguards with assault rifles. And so they usher us into this smaller tent area off to the side. And when I say tent, these are like structures. I'm lacking a better word for it, but a sort of tent building. And so we go into it, and the Dalai Lama is there, and we sit down on the floor. And I was being somebody who's brought up in the camera world, I've always been a fly on the wall. I'm not someone who would interject a lot in a scenario like that. It wasn't really about me. I wanted them, the anthropologists and people like that, to be able to say what they had to say. So I just really sort of sat back into the back of the room and just sort of watched in awe, because this is a person I knew, and like I said, that butting up against, that needing for some commonality or something I can hold on to and say, oh yeah, I recognize this, you know. I recognized him, you know, and I knew him, and I had dabbled in Buddhism here and there throughout my life. I was always curious about it. I read a couple of different books, and so there was this really nice feeling that set over me about being around him, and he was very sweet and joking around with us and making us laugh, and I remember his smile being infectious. And we wrapped up, and he said, okay, you know, look, you're my guest, like, come to my speech, you know. And I'm about to speak and everything. He goes, I hope I don't bore you and make you fall asleep. And we're all, you know, it's really cute and funny. And so we all left, and I set up my camera in the back, and he's in the front on the stage, and he gives his speech, and it was a beautiful speech. And he spoke in English, actually, and they translated him into Hindi. And we finished up, and I was really in my element, trying to get the shots I needed to get and all those kind of things. And so when it all wrapped up, we got our stuff together and we're leaving, and we sort of had a breakdown of like where everyone sort of went their own ways and everything sort of fell apart. And I didn't really have any directive, and I didn't really want any directive. I really wanted some time because of this experience. And so my assistant and me, we both kind of like set out, just decided to take, some time to, without the camera and without our experience, any job related things, let's just go walk around. So we went out and walked around, and I remember this is a seminal moment for me in that faith and spirituality have always been something that because I was raised in no sort of denomination, and these things have been there, right? Because they're part of our culture, but it was something I've always sort of felt different than a lot of people in. And so being at a Hindu festival and being around this at this point, a little over 2 weeks straight with no respite, nowhere out, mentally to go. And then meeting this incredible, wonderful, beautiful, Dalai Lama with his beautiful stories and personality, and Buddhism entering into the equation. I started to walk around, and I sort of neither her and I talked. We just sort of walked next to each other. And I remember the vivid imagery in front of my face, in front of my eyes, of this was all on sand. It was a desert almost, right up until a river. And I remember it was kind of windy, and the wind was whipping the dust all over the place. And the light was kind of low in the sky at this point, so it was creating these incredible light almost shows, the sunlight streaming through things. And like I said, it was getting to that sort of twilight, dusky time of day. It was gorgeous. And I looked around and I saw people. You would look to your right and there'd be people praying or talking. You look to your left and there's a band playing and people sort of meditating around them. And you walk around and you just see people everywhere, little mopeds, people on bicycles, and elephants every now and again walking past you. And I remember having this distinct thought that I thought to myself, I said, my whole life has been one of sort of thinking about where I fit in the spiritual conversation of human condition. And I never felt even comfortable in that space. I felt that, well, you never really went to church. You didn't go to synagogue. You didn't go to the mosque. You didn't, whatever. And I always felt probably a little bit of guilt for that as well, but always felt sort of like I didn't belong in that sphere. And it wasn't until that day, that walking out of that speech and walking down that little, I wouldn't call it a street, but a dirt path, where I started to think to myself that at first it was simple. It was a very simple statement in my mind, which was, well, there's 1 billion people in this country, and over 1 billion people. And not all of them, but a large majority of them believe in Hinduism, which is a religion I'm now absorbing on a scale I never thought I would. Then there's a cross section of people in this country that that are Sikhs, a totally different thing. And there's people in this country that are Muslim. Another religion, by the way, all three of these religions, pretty foreign to me, to my experience. And so I just remember thinking in the context of the Dalai Lama, in the context of this Hindu experience, I remember thinking that, well, maybe it's not that faith is I've always thought that well, who's right or who's wrong? And it was the moment where I realized maybe it's not about right or wrong. Maybe it's that everyone is right, and that your spiritual being is that thing that you recognize within yourself, and that faith that you work with or you bring into that experience that you have. Maybe that faith is your guide for that, and that I just remember feeling this incredible sense of I just can't imagine anyone is wrong. in this. And like I said, you have to understand that I really felt that there had to be a right or wrong. And it was the first time in my life that I started thinking that there isn't, or like, that doesn't make any sense. And I think it was because I needed to see the rest of the world experiencing these things. And so, and for me, I needed to, you know, take that in and understand that, like, all the judgments and all the experience I've had for the 24 years of my life at that point had led me to this place where, you know, I remember a really strong sense of relief and freedom in a lot of ways about my experience that day, and that I felt like a giant, you know, weight had been lifted. And now I was sort of like on a new chartered path towards sort of just being more open, and also not worrying about these questions, but allowing sort of the new questions to live and to permeate, and to go try to find some of the answers to them. And it really, the rest of my trip there, we still stayed for another 10 days or so. And like I had said earlier, that January 24th day happened, and that was a whole nother thing. But all of it, I was left, I never left that feeling in that moment. And ever since then, I've been a much more open-minded person. I've been much more trying to be much more aware that, you know, my experience is my experience. I can't expect others to adhere to my experience, or even to adhere to my worldview.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Christopher Stolle of Breaking the Fourth Wall. If you enjoy our show, you can find it on YouTube. Just look up Realm of the Mist Entertainment, or just look up Realm of the Mist Entertainment on Anchor.fm, Apple iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, or wherever quality podcasts can be heard. And also, you can find us on all the social medias. Just look for Realm of the Mist Entertainment. And I will catch you on the other side.
Wow, what an experience to have gone through. I imagine it's, you know, it sounds to me like it's something that really touched you in such a huge way, and shaped your existence from where you were before and then to where you are now. Were you hallucinating every day of the event, or just that first day?
Just the first day. Yeah. There was a little bit of I don't know if you ever heard of the term chillum, but it's sort of like a hash, sort of marijuana type thing. It's very low grade and not, you know, I did a little bit of that after, but not much. I'm not a big drug person. I'm not also against, like, whatever, but no, it's just that first day was the only time I had eaten anything. And it was only because, like I said, I was overwhelmed, and I just sort of, it was kind of like when in Rome, and I felt like I had to. Once I had gotten more accustomed to everything and gotten sort of my base to my feet, I was able to sort of like say no to certain things when I needed to, or say, yeah, you know, like I was able to navigate better, but I wasn't really prepared at that moment to like do anything. It was just sort of overwhelming.
Well, how about the bathing ritual? Now, is that something that happened on the 24th or the 26th?
Well, the whole time, the 24th, the whole time they had been bathing, right? So like when you did that boat crossing that I mentioned earlier, you would see people in the river, and they would sort of do this. It was almost like a dance of bobbing in and out of the water. And they were, not everyone, of course, but a lot of people, I mean, the joy, and people would be smiling and laughing and really enjoying it. And so it was always happening. I think it's just that the 24th was the culmination. And so that was sort of like the big day. In a way, it's almost like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that relates to us, but you know, it's almost like, imagine like Christmas and New Year's, and how, you know, we have Christmas, and then a week later we do New Year's, you know, so it's like, oh, everyone, New Year's Eve, everyone go out, you know, go have a party, or go downtown or whatever. So it's like, you know, that day was the biggest day. Again, unfortunately, I should know, but I don't know the actual pure significance of the day. But it was January 24th, 2001. And it was millions and millions of people.
Wow. Did you participate in the bathing ritual, or is that something you just observed?
I did not. And again, some of them did. Some of the people that guy Ken I mentioned earlier, like he did. I'm sure Casey did. I didn't witness Casey doing it. I'm a bit of a germphobe, and I was really nervous about the water. The water was pretty mucky, so to speak, with all these people bathing. Also, the thing to keep in mind is this. So this area of the river is actually where three rivers meet. The Ganges River is the main one, but like three other rivers, I think the Yamuna and another one, I forget the other name. But so this area, literally the head of this river where they're all three are meeting is where the Stairway to Heaven is. And so people go there all the time to bathe. It's just that this is like the pilgrimage day, event. And it happens every 2 years is a certain Mela. Every 4 years is the Kumbh Mela.
And that's what this was, the Kumbh Mela?
Yeah, and this one, 2001, it's happened again, I think. Every 12 years, it's got much more significance. And I remember when I had gotten there, some of the anthropologists were saying, you're like, Colin, you're part of a historic thing here. Like, this is a big deal. Because I think it was the 12th one, 12 years. It had been 12 years, but it was the 84. Whatever the cycle is, it was the penultimate, was the ultimate one. It was the 112th one or whatever, and so it just had a lot of significance in Hindu religion, the numbering of things. And I think that 2001 one, Kumbh Mela was a massive event.
So you get to say you've met the Dalai Lama. I mean, not a lot of people can say that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was like I said, it was not only was he identifiable, which I can't tell you how important it was for me, but also, as you said, I mean, again, for me, I mean, just you look at his face and you look into his eyes, and there's such a warmth there. It's indescribable. Like, comparing to most people I've met, there was such a warmth and I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it felt good. It felt really good to see that,
Have you been back to India since?
I have not. I'd like to, but it's a little pricey, and it's also such a long trip, So it's an investment. It's like, it's the kind of place that you can't go for 5 days. I mean, you can, but like, it would be brutal to like fly all the way out there and 5 days later fly back.
Yeah, it's something you want to spend a little time. Now, you said you were there for a whole 30 days?
Yeah. We were there for around 30 days a month.
Okay, so that culminated into a film, a documentary. Is that available now?
It is. I don't know where. I have to find out, because it was in theaters briefly, about 2007, 2006, something like that. And I think it was available on DVD. But like I said, the movie, I mean, it's old, it's old for our time, but I think you're talking about, it was released, I think, at least 16, 17 years ago. So I don't know. I know I looked at it recently to see if it was on Amazon Prime or anything, and I couldn't find it. It's called Take Me to the River.
Okay. Take Me to the River, Drop Me in the Water.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. And it was Kenneth Ang directed it. He's a great documentary filmmaker. He has a movie about his father coming from China, and a movie about Japanese baseball, which I actually did. I went to Japan with him, which is a whole nother amazing experience. But yeah, it was his film.
So you've had some really positive experiences in the film industry. I understand you're a filmmaker. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little about your career in film business. Why don't you tell us about when it started and how you got interested into it, and what your roles have been. Are you director, cameraman, actor, whatever it is you do in the film industry?
So I am professionally, I am a cameraman. I work in documentaries and reality television. and corporate video. Like, it's kind of a mixed bag, but I do a lot of different things. But yeah, that's sort of professionally. And in the last about 10 years, I got the itch to be a director. And so I've been a cameraman for over 20 years. But in the last 10, I sort of always loved writing, and I always loved telling stories. But I just, I was a cameraman. I didn't really want to make the leap. I was scared, probably. And so eventually I just said, you know what? A friend of mine, my wife was very supportive, and my friend, and it was like, let's just do it. Let's make a film, And so I made a movie that's actually available on Amazon Prime called Sleepover, which is a sort of experimental horror movie. And after that, I just fell in love with it. I don't think I'll ever not do it. It was so fun, and it's so cool to tell a story through a visual medium like film or video, film production. And so, yeah, and in terms of camera, I went to film school and everything back in the 90s and got an incredible education in film school. And then after that, I just kind of dived right into the world of filmmaking and TV and all kinds of different areas.
Do you write your films?
I do. I co-write them. So I really enjoy writing a film with people. I don't really like to write alone. All three of my last 3 feature films, I co-wrote with someone. I like the collaboration, and I love talking about characters with someone and geeking out about all that stuff. So it's yeah, the answer to that is I do write them, but I co-write them, with someone.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your last 3 feature films. Why don't you just describe what each of them are and their names, and if they're available still on Amazon or wherever my listeners could probably go back and find them.
Yeah, no, thank you. So about 3.5 years ago, I made a movie called Bloody Drama. It is available on Amazon Prime for streaming, so you can watch it tonight. And then it's also available on DVD at screamtimefilms.com. So I had made Sleepover was my first film. And so when I finished that, Screamtime Films is an awesome indie horror company out of Texas. So they reached out to me. I sent them a copy. They liked it. They said, hey, we want to distribute this. After that, the owner of the company reached out to me and said, hey, would you want to make a film for us? And I said, yeah, that sounds amazing. So he actually he said, well, here's how it works for me. I give you 3 or 4 ideas, and I let you go make them. So he gave me 3 or 4 ideas, and I picked one, and it was called Bloody Drama, and it was a slasher movie. I'd never done a slasher movie. I had never thought I'd do a slasher movie. So I did this slasher movie. Like I said, it's available on Amazon Prime. Check it out. These are no budget movies. I have to put that as a caveat. I still want you to enjoy them. I still think they're great, but they're no budget movies. And so I made that. That was, an amazing experience. And then after that was over, like I said, it was in the slasher Halloween sort of genre. And I loved it, but I was like, I want to try to do a more character heavier story. And a sort of domestic violence, domestic hell, crazy abduction story came to me. So I wrote a film called Domestic Hell with Ivy Lamb, was my co-writer on Domestic Hell. I came to her, I said, I got this idea. I don't even know if it's any good. What do you think? And she was like, because she's a really great playwright here in Texas. And she said, no, it's awesome. It's a great idea. She goes, and it's heavy. It's all about domestic violence and this serial killer and all this crazy stuff. And so we set out, we made that, and same thing. That is available on Amazon Prime tonight if you want. Grab your popcorn. It's an intense film. Bloody Drama is not intense. It's fun. It's a slasher. A little bit of blood, killer. Domestic Hell is an intense movie. And then after that, I kind of I wanted to go in a new direction. And so I just finished making a film called Remy's Demons, which is right now available on Amazon Prime, just DVD though, for DVD owners. The streaming isn't available yet. But Remy's Demons is a movie about the occult, and sort of imagine if Carrie's mother had an autistic boy on the spectrum, and her son was raised in sort of the occult witchcraft sort of culture. So that's sort of the backdrop of Remy's Demons, and it's a possession story and all kinds of stuff. And so they're you know, I try to, like, each film I try to mix it up and challenge myself, honestly, to be honest. Like, that's the biggest thing, is I really try to, like, give myself new challenges to sort of learn. And I'll wrap it up by saying, you know, for me, I went to film school from 94 to 97. I haven't been in film school since 1997. It's a long time. And I've been telling people lately, the last 5 or 6 years of my life, I've been calling my second film school. And I have been having so much fun doing it, and I love it every second of it. And it's brutal and it's hard, but it's so much to learn and so many new things to sort of be educated on. And it's amazing, miraculous.
Well, I'll in the show notes, I'll put links to all those 3 films.
Thank you.
So that my listeners can find it. What are you working on today?
So right now I'm wrapping up, you know, Remy's Demons in terms of, like, promotions. You know, it's the thing that I found, and if there's any filmmakers out there that are, or people that want to make films, you know, the whole thing is, so, you know, write a great script, then, you know, organize yourself and make a great movie. But then don't forget, like, that end process of promotion is probably the most important. And I have kind of failed on a level of my other movies. And so this movie, I'm just trying really hard not to just jump to the next project, and not give this film the service it deserves, really, for the actors too, because, you know, these people gave their time and effort to make this movie with me, and they deserve every ounce of my energy. So in terms of that, yeah, I'm working on a screenplay for a new movie, another sort of micro budget movie, sort of a sci-fi horror story, another direction to go in. And I'm also developing an episodic television show, sort of a Game of Thrones-y type thing. So those are the 2 major things. I have a couple of TV sizzle reel type things in the works too. But, you know, the whole thing is, it's just like, you know, we've just all got to keep striving. You know, it's like I can never stop.
Well, it seems like it was still, although there are no budget films, there's still money involved. How do you do your funding and all? Do you have a GoFundMe account that you send people to help you raise the funds for these films?
Yeah. So what I've been doing is, each film I do an Indiegogo campaign. I just really like Indiegogo's platform. So I'll launch a campaign once the script's ready and I'm sort of ready to sort of move forward, start casting. So yeah, I launch a campaign. I try to promote it through Facebook, social media, and then also I try to do a lot of networking to businessmen and local people to try to see if there's anyone that, you know, you never know if you meet someone about, like I said, Bloody Drama. I was so fortunate. A businessman out of New Jersey named Joe Espinoza, gave me some funding for that. So you never know, you know, I mean, you meet people along the way, and I have done video work for him for many years, and I knew he was a great guy, and so you just got to kind of look around, see what's out there, and maybe there's someone that might say, you know what, I want to help out. Let me give you a little bit of money. And like I said, my movies have all been, you know, $4,000 to $2,000 budgets.
So doing film is all about connections. So it sounds like you've made in your career since '97, you've made quite a few connections, and that's helped you out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's everything. I mean, I don't know many other industries, so I can't speak on that, but on other industries. But yeah, this industry is like, you have to, you know, because let me put it to you this way. It's not even just that I need to know a guy like Ronald Mercado in San Antonio. Guy can do everything. He's like a Swiss Army knife. He acts, he directs, he shoots, he does sound, you know. He's an amazing person to know. But beyond that, I need to know people that own houses, or I need to know a cafe owner because I might need to shoot in a cafe. I need to know a guy that owns a gas station that is okay with a film shooting at his gas station because I might have a gas station. You know what I mean? Like, so you almost have to try to really be a chamber of commerce of like trying to know as many different disparate type of people as you can, so that you have this collection database. Oh, I need a cafe. Let me call Susan at that Joe's Cafe, you know? And so, yeah, I would say networking is everything on every single level.
Well, you said it's kind of like having a database. Is there anything physical, or is it just something you keep in your head? I mean, how do you track all your connections?
Absolutely, yeah. So I do a spreadsheet. I'm not great about it. I don't want to present myself as I'm pretty laxed, but I do create a couple spreadsheets with contacts, and emails too. Like I use one of my emails for specifically more work related. And so what I do is I'll just like archive those emails into folders that are titled the movie stuff. So I can always go back and reference, particularly for actors, by the way, because, you know, I'm in South Texas and it's, you know, there's a ton of great actors, but it's not as easy to find actors as it would be, let's say, in New York or Los Angeles, particularly just because the casting, you know, there's a lot of casting agents out there in New York and, you know, and so I keep a database of actors, particularly because, yes, I said no to Karen for Domestic Hell, but maybe Karen's perfect for Remy's Demons, you know? So it's like, you don't want to ever shut those doors down, because Karen might have been the greatest actor ever for Domestic Hell, you know? So it's just like being kind of aware of never saying no to somebody or you know, just keeping that door open.